Alright, I want to do a real basic lighting demo and introduce you guys to some lighting principles. Okay, so I have a really basic set here that I've created. It's a rough table, a sphere, a cube, and then up above it there's a light. Okay, so what happens right now if I do a standard render by clicking the render icon right here, I get the Maya software render where there's just black in the background, and then I have a rough set in there. Okay, what I can do if I come over to create, I have an option for lights right here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click the dotted line here. It's going to leave that whole light option open. Okay, I can come over here, and right now we'll talk a little bit about some of these, the most commonly used lighting methods that we're going to be using, and that I like to use, are spotlights and area lights. Okay, there's an ambient light. I'll show you what it does in a second here, but it sort of generalizes everything and gives light to the entire set. So again, if you're a beginning student, this doesn't really concern you as much. You can watch it if you like, but I want you guys to stay focused on your work too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, I'm going to create a spotlight. I'm just going to touch the light, and what it's done inside my scene is that it's created a basic spotlight right here. Okay, the spotlight has all the same features just like any other object would have. Okay, so once I have this object selected, if I hit Control A, I have a series of attributes for that light. Inside those attributes, I can go in there and I can control the intensity of the light. I can turn shadows on. There's light effects. There's tons of different options. Okay, what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to start with this basic light right here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rotate this light just like I would a normal object. I'm going to go to the rotation selection, rotate it. I'm going to come back here and make sure I rotate it exactly at about -90, just to be exact there. I accidentally rotated that off a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and fix those right there. So I have it at 90. Now you'll notice when I come in, if I hit the render option, look at what happens inside my scene here. Okay, my software now is off. There's no more default renderer. It's picking up what that light is doing. Okay, so this light is now giving me some basis of light coming down onto my objects. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you something really quick here. There's a technique in lighting that's been around since old movie days. It's called 3-point lighting. Okay, and what 3-point lighting is we basically have 3 lights to light an object, because one light acts as the key light that's hitting it. Okay, the other light we can position and that acts as a reflective light to our object, and another light could act as bounce light or some type of diffused light on the object as well. Okay, we call that 3-point lighting. How many of you, anyone in here had photography classes? Talk about 3-point lighting in photography, right? They do it on movie sets. Okay, it's a commonly used aspect of lighting. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to go ahead and create a couple more lights, and I'm going to put them around there. Now, I have seen students where you can take a light, you can hit Control D and duplicate the light. I don't like to do that because when I've done that before in sets and locations, I've discovered in Maya all of a sudden the light will stop working for some reason, and then I have to go back and replace them all. So I just go in and I create a new light. So to do that, I come back to create. I'm going to go to light and then go to spotlight. There, I've created another one. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to bring this light up here. I'm going to create one more light. Okay, back to spotlight there. Okay, now before I go in and start positioning these and talking about the basics of 3-point lighting, okay, let me get these all set up here. I don't need to be this picky because I'm going to rearrange them in just a second anyway. Let me just put this at -90 here. Okay, there we go. So I want to show you what happens now if I come in here and if I do a render. Okay, whoa, look at that. I have 3 lights in my scene now. Okay, so I'm going to turn 2 of these off, then I'm going to talk about the basics of the light for a little bit just to explain those to you. Okay, then I'll come back and we'll set up the 3-point light. Okay, so to turn it off, Control Attribute, Control A for attribute settings. I'm going to come in here, I can drop the intensity down to 0. You'll notice as I raise the intensity setting on a light, it's showing me what it looks like. Okay, so I'm going to turn this one off here. I'm going to turn this light off right here. Okay, I want to show you a couple little shortcuts in a way that we can adjust lights really quickly. One is that it can be a little hard sometimes when we set up a light. We have to see what that light is affecting. So let's talk about some of the attributes of a light really quick. Okay, first off, if I select my light here, okay, I have an intensity setting for it. if I raise this intensity right now, and if I hit render, look at how bright my light's going to be. It's super bright. Okay. However, though, I have under this selection here, okay, I have a decay rate. What is decay? Decaying is the light fading off after it leaves the key light source. Okay. Right now I have it set at no decay. If I come in here and I select this and I drop this down to linear decay and I come in and I hit render, okay, my light has gotten much softer. So I'm going to save this image to show you. Okay, I'm going to come over here, click on the little green image sign there. Okay, I'm going to come back, touch my light again. I'm going to go back and put it on no decay. Okay, and then I'm going to hit render again. All right, so look at the difference. That's the light on no decay. That's the light on decay. Okay, so working with a light that's set to have a light decay on it, okay, for the light to decay. That's what we're used to as artists when we see light coming in through a window and it's going to hit an object and it's going to be a little bit brighter and then it's going to sort of fade off. Unfortunately, in the basic sort of lighting of Maya, we also have to go in there and indicate what some of that bounce light is doing and how things are moving across. Hold on a minute. Why is this up here? I don't know. So I'm going to leave it alone. Okay. Didn't mean to hit a button there. All right. So let me show you some other basics about the light option that we have here. Okay. Right now I have it on, I'm going to put it onto linear decay. Watch what happens if I pull that back. And I come in here and I render again. Okay. So it gets much lighter. The further back the light goes, the less intensity there's going to be. Okay. So let's say if I come in here and I grab this light and I bring this a little bit closer to my scene in here like this, and I hit render now, it's going to be much brighter. Okay. So let's take a look at some basics that we can adjust on the light itself. Okay, if I come down here, I have the penumbra angle. So if I come over here and I select this, okay, actually, give me a second here. Let's start off with our cone angle here. If I adjust my cone angle, see what my light's doing right now? Okay. My light is increasing. So if I increase my light that wide, it's now totally increased the radius at which the light is coming out. And if I hit render, look at what's happening. Now it's lighting up almost everything inside my location right there. Okay. So if I come down here, and if I go back, now the penumbra, if you look here in the light shape, that's what it's affecting. It's affecting whether or not it's, see right here, if it's super sharp and then fades off, or if I bring that angle back, it's one intense light shape there. That can be the difference on whether or not if you have an outside light and it's on and it's sort of diffusing, hitting the ground. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to adjust my cone angle. You can open it, look, all the way up to like 180 degrees if you like. Okay. Now, this is something that's really helpful when you're setting up multiple lights in a set. Okay. It gets really hard to figure out how to get this light and to see what it's looking at. So you know what you can do? When the light's touched, you can come over here under panels and you can go to look through selected. And now you're looking through the light. Okay, this is extremely helpful because now I can come over and I can find something in my set that I want that light to hit and I can zoom in on it. Okay. Also what's cool is check this out. As I'm looking through it, remember what I just showed you? The cone angle? Look at what my cone angle is doing now. Okay, it's increasing because I'm looking through the light. If I come over and I look at the penumbra angle, look at what that's doing as well. Okay, so by looking through the light, understanding some of those other attributes, I can modify things very quickly. So I can come in here, I can get onto a particular area that I might want to be. Once I have that done, I just come over, go back, I hit my space bar, right mouse button to perspective view, and there's my light. So let's see what happens right now when I hit render. See, my light's focused just on that little particular area. Okay, so that's a huge benefit for me that I could come in here. I can easily grab another light, let's say. Okay, now I like the rule of lighting left to right, so I'm going to come back and do that lamp a little bit later. I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to select that and say look through selected. And I have to sort of look at my set to establish where I am. I'm going to have the light come from this side, going from left to right and then accessing with the cube behind it. So now I know where I am. Go back to perspective view. I'm going to come back and take this light right here. Okay, look through selected. I'm going to come over here so I can see where my other light is hitting right there. Okay, so that's my key light is coming this direction. So if I want to have a little bit of reflective light on that rim, I need to come back in here. I'm going to see if I can line up on just the sphere about like right here. Okay, all right, going to get that done. Go back to perspective view. Okay, I can come back over to this now and look through selected. I'm going to come over here and have this light sort of right up here on my object like so. Okay, about there. I'm going to go ahead and hide this cube for right now. Go back to perspective view. Okay, now I'm sort of getting this triangle set up of a 3-point lighting effect. Okay, if I hit render right now, the light's going to get blown out, but look at what starts to happen. I start to get a little bit more of an effect happening here. Okay, if you'll notice, if you hit on your keyboard, if you hit 7, you get this rough representation from Maya, but it sucks. Okay, it's temporary. It doesn't give you much. You'll notice, let me see here. See if I move that, it's not even giving me any indication of what that light's doing. Oh, because it's not on. Duh, Phil, I forgot. So if I lightly turn it on here, but this only works for temporary viewing, and you can't guide this for a render. Okay, so what happens is that when you get a bunch of lights in a scene, this sometimes doesn't work. So you can't rely on this. Sometimes it's just great to be able to come in here, quickly adjust lights. Let me go in here. I'm going to add some light on the back side there, and I'm going to come up here and set up right here. Let's take a render real quick and take a look at what it looks like. So you see what I did there is I have my key light hitting right here, coming left to right. I have the secondary light sort of in the back here. See what it's doing? It's adding like a little bit of diffuse. Okay, and then you see that little bit of that white edge on there. You see that? That's giving me the illusion of a reflective light in the back, which is a principle of basic drawing, right? So now what I can do, I'm looking at this. I'm going to come back over here. I have that light selected. I'm going to say look through selected. I might turn it a little bit more this way. Might increase the intensity of it a little bit more. Come back to my perspective view. I'm going to turn back to right here. So now you can see where it's hitting that little highlight there. Do you see that? All right. So let's do a render again. See what it looks like. Aha! Look at that. Now I have a definitive reflective light there. Now maybe that's too much, so I need to make the decision if I want to adjust that really quick. Okay. So see how I'm going back and forth doing all this rendering? Maya has something that's a lot of fun that's called an IPR render that saves us a lot of time. So when I have my render window open right here, okay, actually I'm going to come over here. See up here under render globals? Right next to it is the render, it's the IPR setting. I'm going to go ahead and click this right now, and it's going to bring up this wonderful little window like this, right? What I can do now is select this red box, okay, and it selects the whole entire thing. If I want to select one area in my IPR render, I just draw a box like this, and now watch what happens when I move this light. The IPR render will update and it'll show me what is taking place. Okay, so see it like that. You know what? Why is my IPR not going? That's not good. The IPR should be lighting up right now. Let's try it again. There it goes. I had to reset it for some reason. So look at what happens now if I adjust my light. See what Maya's doing? It's going in there and it's rendering it for me while I'm working on it to show me my adjustments really quickly. And so in this particular case, I'm trying to get that reflective light bouncing off that edge so I can come in here and I can adjust this. Oh, that's too bright, right? So now I can adjust this down a little bit and get it just the way I like it, like that. Okay? All right, now with that in mind, let's come over here and I'm going to select this other light that I have. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pull this back a little bit. See it adjusting? And push it forward. Uh-oh. That doesn't look right, and I have that round circular shape in there. So if I pull this back a little bit, I'm going to try to get this to fade off. Now, let me go back and check the quality of my light here. This is on no decay. That's not good. It's going to give me that hard round. It's a straight light coming through. I can put this on linear decay right now. Okay. I can come down here, say look through selected. Okay, I can see why it's getting that little center shape in there. So what I can do is adjust the cone angle on this, okay, to go over more of the light. You'll notice I get a little bit of lag now because I have one window open and Maya's updating it here. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll close that real quick. So let's say I get this lined up about there. Come back to perspective view. Turn here to the side. Okay, let's do now again, an IPR render isn't always exact. It's a temporary render. If I come in here and close this, and if I adjust my render settings under common right here, and if I go down and put this at, let's say, HD 720 right now, okay, and under here I go to production quality, highest quality, not intermediate, production right here, and close. That render is going to be a huge night and day difference between the IPR. The IPR is giving me a quick sampling, okay? So what I can do is if I'm really working on something really, really detailed, I can save this image right now by clicking that green box. I could come over here, and then I could say, okay, I adjusted this intensity now to linear decay, so I'm going to raise the brightness of that light, and then I'm going to come over, and you know what, before I do that, let's do IPR again on it, see what it looks like. Okay. Actually, it's not doing the IPR because I have the window set up here. So let me just come back and do it. There we go. Now the IPR will go. Okay. However, though, look at what's happened to the IPR. It's huge. This is how I can crash Maya right now. And why is it huge? Because I went back and did that render at 720. Right? So it says select an area to begin tuning. I could select just a little bit of an area here. And I could go in there and I could fine tune this now. But that's still a lot of memory being used to support that window. That's why you go back over here, you go to common, and I tend to work in, and a lot of artists do, one of the smaller windows like the 480 size. Okay, so if you come back over here, let's go custom the 640 by 480 right there, close. Now if I go IPR, it's much more smaller and it's much more manageable. Okay, I'm not using as much memory. I get the area that I want to affect, like so, and now I can come over here and I can drag this light and I can watch what happens when I pull it back. Do you guys see it up there getting lighter? I mean getting darker because I'm withdrawing light source from there. Okay. I could pull it left or right, let's say. Okay. All right, I can select this other light back here. That's on no decay. I can raise the intensity of it. This is where it can be helpful to work from multiple views. Why? If I come in here and have multiple views set up, and if I have a dedicated top view right now, right here, see I can grab the light and pull it closer or forward or to the side, left, right. I can rearrange it quickly. Okay? So, and then I can look at my perspective view. So let's say I wanted to bring this light a little bit closer. Maybe I want to pull it a little bit more around here. And I'm going to go ahead and see if I turn that light a little bit. Okay? Now see what happens when I turned it? I lost that reflective edge. So I need to turn that back. There we go. Get that little bit of that reflective light on there. Okay, a lot of you have had basic drawing and illustration, right? This is sort of a core principle right here with a highlight, okay, diffuse light and a reflective light happening. Okay, so any of you can look up 3-point lighting on the internet and find a ton of lectures on this stuff for free. All right, now let me come over here. I want to adjust the position of this. Okay, I'm going to pull this over a little bit. Yeah, there we go. See if I can get it to, what if I turn it a little bit in this direction? So I can see how it's affecting everything in here. Okay, all right, let me come back into my perspective view. All right, now we've just scratched the surface on this. I haven't even gotten into shadows yet. Okay, if I come down here under that particular light, every light has an adjustment on it. If I have that light selected right there, I come down here, I have light effects. Okay, there's fog and all kinds of light glow. If I come, so let's not, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but if I come down here, I can click shadows. Under shadows, I have what are called depth mapping shadows. Okay, if I turn that on, and now if I hit render, look at what happens. There's a shadow now placed in there. Okay? All right, so I'm going to end this lecture right here because we're about done. So you can mess with some lights, go into your scene. In the next class, I'll talk about light linking. you can tell lights to affect certain objects in your scene, and you can tell it not to affect other objects. Okay, so you could assign lights to different things. We'll talk a little bit more about, I'll show you what an ambient light is. Okay, now watch this really quick. I'm going to go ahead here. I wanted to mention that. Let me show you what an ambient light does. Okay, so I have 3 lights that are in there right now, and I'm starting to get some cool effects happening. However, now I have this light that was hitting that little highlight. It's also hitting the ground plane here. That's where I could go in there in the next class. I'll show you how I can unlink that light from that ground plane just to affect one object. Okay, why do I keep getting this? I don't want to. Don't show this message again. Okay, so really quick here, watch. I can turn this light off, right? I have it selected. I'm going to scroll back up here. Okay, I'm going to just drop that down. Okay, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to drop this guy down as well. Now watch, if I select that light, there's an option for it. Right now it's a spotlight. Okay, see it says type spotlight. If I go to ambient light, it changes. Okay, into this little sun guy here. And the thing about ambient light is it lights up the whole entire scene. Okay, so it's really bright though right now. If I bring this down a little bit, it's sort of like the feel of muted fluorescent lights. But see what the ambient light's doing though? So there could be a time to have the ambient light set up, or if I was like inside a warehouse or a classroom and there's a bunch of lights, I could just put one ambient light up on the top and that's it, it'll light the whole scene. But then if there's something specific I want to light, I could come in there. So ambient lights can work to your benefit, but then you come in with spotlights and you can adjust spotlights around certain areas and important center of interest. Okay, so watch what happens if I dull down that a little bit more and I hit render. It makes everything soft now. Okay, and again, if I wanted to change that, I can click on the light while it's selected as an attribute. I'm going to put it on as an area light right now. Let's see what an area light is. An area light is a square shaped light, and basically I can do this to it. I can stretch the shape of a light. Well, it's not doing it right now. Let's see. Maybe it's because I need to create a new one. I'll cover that in the next class here. I'll keep talking and then I'll forget where we're at. So I'm going to put this back to a spotlight. And there it is. And if I click render, that's what I have right now. Okay. So I'll finish this part and then we'll add on to the lecture next class. Some real basics here about lights. And just like your any other shapes you create, any lights that you create will be listed in the outliner right here. And you can double tap them and you can call them main. You can label them. Double click on this guy. I can call this my fill light, let's say, or diffuse light. Okay, and then I can come over here and I can call this reflective light. Okay, so I can label all those up depending on the objects that they're assigned to. I can group them as well. Okay, also notice on this main light right here, if you look over to the side here, I'll talk about this. We have the illuminates by default. If I click that off and hit render, my scene's black. So if I click that off, that means it's not illuminating anything in the set. Okay. I also have an emit specular, and you guys know what a specular highlight is, those of you that have had rendering before. Okay, so I can turn that off and on, and I have diffuse lighting as well. So if I, let's see what happens. If I hit render right here, nothing's happening there. If I hit diffuse, okay, I get a light diffuse light, and if I got close up on it and hit emit specular, I'll get a nice white little highlight in the center there. That's starting to happen right there. Okay? All right, so those are some basics. We'll talk about them in Thursday's class as soon as we come in. Okay? All right, let's jump back into this lecture. So where we left off the other day, this is a quick review. 4 is wireframe, 5 is our shaded mode. We were talking about 3-point lighting. We were going in and adjusting some of our lights. I showed you guys how to look through a light by touching it and coming over to panel, look through selected in the OpenGL view. Okay. Also, I started to mention at the very end there, when you create lights, you have your lights labeled over here inside the outliner. They're listed, and you can double click on them and you can go in and list them. Okay, that's a good idea. Once you start getting into a large set, okay, especially those of you that are working on the laboratory right now, once you start assigning some basic bump maps, textures, anything in there to your location, you want to make sure you come back in here and you have your lights labeled, because you might have, right now I just have a real simple set here, but if I had numerous pieces, I might label this as main sphere, and then fill for the main sphere, and then reflective light for the main sphere. Okay, you don't always have to use 3-point lighting on every object inside your set. Okay, not at all. What you want to do, the best way to sort of approach lighting, is you want to set up one main view, okay, that you always look through, and then you render through that main view. So the best way to do that is to, I used to work with a friend of mine. He used to put a marker where he used to have a camera that would be set. But a real simple way is you can just create another camera. So if you come over here under Create, you come down under Camera right here and create this base camera. Inside the middle of the scene right here, it's going to create a new camera. So I can take this camera right here. Well, as it's selected, just like the lights, I can come on over and I can say Panel Look Through Selected. So I can come over here and I can set up this camera to have the exact angle that I want to have. Now the reason why this is important is that this is how I had set up my scene so far, with my main light right over here with, actually, see, that's why it's so easy to get confused. I think I had it, yeah, set up like this. Best way I can check is I come over here, go back to perspective and look, and yeah, I had my light over to the right, and here's that new camera I just created right here. So I could come over here and I could double click on this, and I like to call it main, so I know where my main camera is. That way I use my perspective camera to rummage through my set and make adjustments. And also the benefit of doing this is when I'm rendering a large location, okay, I can click on my 4-view setup right here, okay, and I might come down, or it could be a 3-view, it could be the outliner set up with 2 windows, whatever your particular layout is established as, okay. For right now, let me go back to here. Let's go back to the main view. We'll go back to the 4. So what's great about this is I can have a top view open, panel, and I could come up here and say orthographic view and say top. That way I can grab a light and move it around when I need to. And then also down here, I could come over and say panels, perspective, and go to main. That way I can always see what the main view looks like. Okay. And then you'll notice as I touch a window, if I touch this window, and you can see it lightly highlights around it, okay, versus if I touch that window. So watch, if I touch this window and I hit the render button, it just rendered out that frame. So if I touch this window really quick and I'm working, I can hit render and I can see what my main camera is looking at, okay, and what the view is starting to look like. That's really important to me because if I start moving my camera around in my location, okay, let's do that for example here in our perspective view. If I look at my set right here and render it, it's going to look totally different than what it would look like right here. Okay? All right? Night and day difference, okay? Especially as I go in and I start adding lights and modifying. I'm basically setting up my scene and lighting to be viewed from one particular view. Where that could change might be, this is when you get into more advanced and you get into what we call CG layout. If I have my scene set up and there's a particular action that's going to take place where like characters are fighting and they go from like, let's say, they start in one part of the set and then they end up and through the storyboards they move to a second part of the set, I'm going to have to be concerned about that in the way that I light my set. So what's really important is always having a good understanding of what's going to take place, especially if you're doing this for somebody in a professional standpoint. You always want to understand what the pathway of action and animation is going to be inside your location. Okay, but for right now, I'm just focusing on having one key frame here. So if I come over here, I click back, I'm going to go to my 4-view setup, and I can look at main right here and see exactly what I'm looking at. I could touch it, and I could render, get a quick view. So I'm going to work in perspective for a little bit, even though my main camera is right here. Okay, so let's go back. Let's talk about the attributes of the light. We select the light. We hit Control A. Okay, I have these lights off right now, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this back on. I have my main light set. Okay, and I have this little side light set here. Okay, and let's hit render again. Let's start to see what our set's looking like. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let's go. I'm going to look through my main camera. I'm going to get it set up and then not mess with it anymore. So I'm going to get it sort of at this angle right about here. Let's do a couple of renders and make sure that's how I'm imagining or liking part of the set. Okay. Alright, so let's leave our main there. I'm going to go back to perspective view. Okay. Now I would go in here and I would basically start adjusting my lights to get it to feel right. And again, I showed you guys the IPR renderer. So if I bring up the IPR, it allows me to select a part of the screen, and then I could come into my OpenGL view here and I can move the lights around and I can see how it's updating. Okay. I could also obviously increase the intensity of my light. There we go. I might decide to bring this back here a little bit more. Okay. Now, let me talk about light linking really quick. Okay, you'll notice my light right now is coming down. It's hitting the sphere, and I don't have a dedicated shadow happening off of it, so that feels a little funny. Okay, so if I come over here, actually the IPR tends not to show the shadows. Let me make sure I have the shadow setting on. I don't. So I'm going to click Depth Map Shadows underneath this light attribute here. Okay, so if I come over here and I render, you can see I now have a dedicated shadow that's coming off of that particular light. Okay, if I don't want my light to affect this ground plane, I can go into light linking and I can adjust that. And this is how I work with light linking. Okay, in my subdivision menu up here where I had polygons, I have animation surfaces, I need to scroll down over here to rendering. Okay, once I've gone over to rendering, it changes the tabs up here. I can come over here. I have a lighting and shading option right here. Okay, inside there you'll see make light links and break light links. Okay, this is really important for us here. In fact, I would recommend that you make hotkeys for these. Okay, the hotkeys I use is the letter M for make light links, and then I use the letter B for break light links. Okay, I just press those. And what that enables me to do, there's also some other really cool commands here. Check this out. I can select this ground plane right here, and I could come up here and I could say select lights illuminating the object. Since I've touched the ground plane, and if I click this right now, it's going to select all the lights that are affecting that particular ground plane. Let's say I could also do the same thing with a light. I can select this light, and I could come back under lighting and shading, and I could say select objects that are being illuminated by this light right now. When I click that, it lights up the whole entire scene. The reason why this is really important is that when you get into a really large set, and you're going to end up with, let's say, maybe 15 lights in there, 20 lights, you will get this weird little shadow or a weird little light reflection on a wall. And you're going to go in and you're going to have a bunch of different lights that are all set to work on different objects. And you're going to have to figure out what light is affecting that particular shadow. Sometimes, thanks to wonderful Maya, right, you will get a glitch where it's just some glitch in a light and you have to go find that light, delete that light, and replace it. That happens sometimes. Okay, but that's the reason why once we start getting into light linking, okay, so what I could do right now is if I select this key light right here, remember over in the very beginning I had a tab there called Illuminates by Default. If I turn that off right now and I come back and render, look what happens. I have no light that's on my particular sphere right now. Okay, but let's talk about, I don't want to necessarily mess with the main light here, but let's say this little secondary light was only supposed to be affecting the sphere right here. Okay, so what I can do right now is I can select this light, put it on Illuminates by Default, touch the light, touch the sphere, come back under lighting and shading and say make light links. Okay, and after I do that, if I come back and click, I will see that this light now is only affecting the sphere. Okay, and so this core light right here is the light that's creating this shadow right here. You see that? Okay, so I'm going to come back and do that on my backlight too. I'm going to select this backlight that's creating that reflective light on my sphere right here. I'm going to select it and take off Illuminates by Default, touch the object I want it to affect, and I'm going to come back over under lighting and shading and say make light links. Okay, so now watch what happens if I touch this light right here, and if I come back under lighting and shading and say select objects illuminated by this light, it lights up that object for me. Okay, so I have the ability to go in there and be really specific about what lights are affecting what particular objects and how that's interacting inside my whole set and location. All right, now let me come over here. I'm going to take this light, I'm going to mess with it for a couple minutes here. I'm going to increase the right now it's on no decay. Okay, which is really bright here. So what I wanted to do is give the effect that I had light coming from one direction. So I was going to jump in here and adjust the cone angle a little bit and open up my light. Let's hit render and see what it starts to look like. Okay, so I have a dedicated shadow happening. Now what happens in here, if I wanted to get more of a soft diffuse light, I can't really get that when I have this light that's set up on no decay. So even if I drop the light down really low, let's see what it does. I just basically get a low version of that with still a nice hard edge on it. It's not giving me the softness that I want. So I can adjust that by coming into linear decay. Okay, and now I can come over here and hit render again. And let's look at what happened. It's much softer. There's much more of a fade off happening in here now. Okay, I have a dedicated highlight that's hitting here. I have a transition happening where I have a bright highlight here. It's getting a little bit secondary here, and then it's fading off. Okay, so without a doubt, when you're looking at it can get really complicated once you start making numerous lights. You start to forget about what each light is doing, and sometimes you get really frustrated inside your scene. You have to go back and check every light, and you have to realize that, hey, when I check this light here, that is set at linear decay. This light is set at no decay. Oh, maybe I need to put that to linear to get it to look a certain way. Okay, you need to sort of work back and forth there. Okay, what I'm going to do really quick is I want to show you a sample now of how I'm going to go ahead and pretend this light is on in the room. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this, I'm going to modify this, bring this over. I'm going to go ahead and modify the example that I already had for you. Okay, I'm going to turn these lights off. I'll come back and use these in a minute. So I'm going to sort of mess with our 3-point lighting and focus on one key light inside our location right now. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get this set up. I'm going to get this positioned. Okay. All right. Let's come in here and let's take a look really quick. All right, let's hit render. Okay, look at what happened when I hit render right there. It's all black. Does anyone know why it's all black? Because my light is sitting inside the sphere. Do you see that? So if I pop my light out down a little bit and get it down just a teeny bit, and now hit render, the light comes out. Okay, so that's really important there. If you move your lights around and if you have multiple lights inside a location, you have one sitting inside a piece of geometry. If I could zoom in like this right now and hit render inside that sphere has light in it. You see that? The light's hitting the base of it right there. Okay. All right. Something else that I could do. Let's say I'm trying to be really exact to the direction of a light coming down. I could select my light, select the sphere. I could come back up under light and shadow linking, and I could say break light links. Okay, so now that light should not be affected there. And if I come back and render it, let's see what happens. See that? So all I did was touch that little sphere, broke the light link to it so the light won't affect that, and then Maya's remembering everything else that's getting affected. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead right now and use this as my key light. Now you'll notice what happens when light comes down, folks, in a traditional room. This is basic drawing stuff here, right? Light travels, light bounces. Okay, it comes down, it hits a ground plane, and it backs and it goes off into other areas of the room. The one thing that's happening in Maya right now is that Maya doesn't really do that. It's just giving me the light coming down. I'm not getting, if you notice on the side here, I don't get any reflective light hitting right here. I don't have any light coming up and hitting underneath my light. So what I can do, this is a good opportunity for me where I can create another light or two, and I could pretty much cheat a little bit and pretend I could create the bounce light that might be happening in the set. So this is how I'm going to do that. I'm going to come back over to create. Okay, I'm going to scroll over to lights, and I'm going to show you, I like using area lights quite a bit. Okay, I have this area light that just created right here, and if you look, it's like a flat square basically. Okay, and you'll see that long line that's pointing in the direction, which is the indication of the light direction. Okay. And let me get this exactly so it's, I want to make sure it's rotated at 90. Okay. This is important to me because if it's not exactly at 90 and I have a 5-degree tilt to it, I'll get a tilt line of the light going across one of the back walls. Okay. And so what I can do right now is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to drop this down. Okay. So actually let's do this. I'm going to go into my my hypershade really quick. Okay, and I'm going to go over and just really fast, I'm going to create a blend right here. I'm going to double click my blend. I'm going to go to color. I'm going to create a white color. I'm going to go in and drag that color and assign it to, oops, to the light bulb real quick. Okay, there. All right, so now let's look at what happens if I come back here I have that light pointing upwards. Look at what happens if I render now. I get the illusion what? That the light's on. Now I have this lit up light right here. However, though, one thing that's happening is it's so bright, it's washing out the bulb from inside there. Okay? All right? So to fix that, I'm going to come over. It's on no decay. It's too bright. So I'm going to put it on linear right now. Okay? So let's come back here again, and let's render that off. Okay? Now look at the difference. Now the key light is hitting, because I put it on linear, it's hitting the bulb, making the bulb look like it's on. Okay? And then it's the left of it's hitting the outside there. That's a little bit more realistic to me. Okay? So what else would happen inside a room? I'm going to have light that's going to come down here. It's going to bounce back, hit the ceiling, and come back. Right now when I do my render, I don't see any top of the light, right? So I can fix that. I'm going to create another light. So I can come down here and create. I'm going to cheat, even though I told you guys not to do this. Don't duplicate lights. I'm just going to do it real quick because I'm in the demo. And then hopefully I can show you how one of these might stop working. I'm going to take this light. I'm going to flip it upside down. Okay. I'm going to rotate it a little. Oops. Rotate it a little bit. Pull it up and over. Okay. Come back to my main set right here. Look up at it and hit render again. Okay. Now obviously that's way too bright of a light right there. So what I can do is I'm going to come in here. I'm going to put that, it's on linear decay. I'm going to drop down the intensity really lightly there. Hit render. Okay. Now it's hitting that pole. Why? Because I have the concentrated light beam coming directly at it. So if I grab the light and turn it a little bit to the side here, like this, okay, bring it back, and I'm going to turn off the emit specular highlight on it, and come back and look right in here. Now I'm going to do an IPR. Okay, actually it came out pretty good. That's what I wanted to do. I just want to get a little bit of some reflective light bouncing off the light right there. So it looks like the light is on. And that's what it's doing right there. So look at what happens if I come back and turn on the emit specular. Okay, it brightens it up just a teeny bit in there. Okay, so if I decide that, you know what, I want that to be a little bit closer, maybe, like so. This is the benefit of having two monitors, guys. Okay, so now I start to get this cool effect where it looks like lights on there, but I want to make sure I get that under angle shot like this so I can see that the light's on. There we go. So now it looks like the light's on. Okay, I can see the pole that's coming up there. Now I need to come down here and I need to address what's happening down here. Okay, right now I only have light basically hitting the sphere and I have no other reflective light hitting anywhere else. So my key light is coming from this. This is my key light right here. It's coming down, it's hitting, putting a highlight here, right? I need to have some reflective light happening on my sphere. So now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to move part of my 2-point light setup, or 3-point I should say, light setup. I'm going to move this over here to about there. Okay. Now I'm moving it a little bit more on the complicated side, right? It's easier for me just to do this, is to select it and say look through selected, and I can just look at the light and I can get it matched up exactly the way that I want. Okay. All right, going to get that about there. All right. Let's go back to perspective view. I'm going to select this light right here. Okay. Look through selected. I'm going to see if I can come over maybe right about here and see if I can get some reflective light that might give a little bit of a nice reflective high on the back there. Okay, let's go back to perspective view. Okay, I'm going to get my IPR up. I haven't turned those lights on yet, so I'm going to select the region that I want to focus on. Okay, I'm going to come over and select this first light right here. I'm going to turn it on a little bit. Okay, just a little bit like that. All right, I'm going to come over, touch the light in the very back. I'm going to turn that one on and see what starts to happen. Now, for that one, it's on no decay. I might want to have it nice and bright to try to get some reflective light coming off of that sphere. So I'm going to turn it up quite a bit. And I can see, it's a little hard to see, I can see a little bit of a white rim right there. So what happens if I grab the light and move it over a teeny bit more? Aha, there we go. You see that? I'm getting that little reflective quality right there on the edge. Okay. So let's do an official render that's a little bit more detailed. Okay. So now I have this light hitting here, and you can see I have that little reflective light that's happening there, and I have some fill light inside here. Okay. I might move this over a teeny bit more, see what happens. You know, it's funny. I've worked some long hours in a studio before working on lighting, and I remember once with a buddy of mine, he was like this, and he was like, he's working on the IPR. He goes, "Why isn't anything working?" And I said, "Dude, you forgot to select the window because you've just been working for so many hours, your brain gets a little tired. You forgot to come in here in the IPR setting and select a particular area to adjust." Okay, so oops. So now that I have that, I can go in here and modify the light a little bit. There we go. Okay. And let's modify this guy in the back here a little bit more. Oh, I'm adjusting the color not. Now look at what happened here. My intensity is up at 10. Just type in like 20. And it just raises the intensity ratio for you. So it's a pre-default setting to go to that 10, but if I want to really push it up now and get that effect of reflective light on the back, I can. Okay. Even though I have light that's coming down from right here, I still feel like I'm not getting a dedicated light hitting this corner right here, and I want to pop that. And I'm also losing a little bit of fill light on this corner. There'd be some reflective light. This is where my light's the brightest right here. So I might actually take this light right here, and I'm going to see what happens if I move it over a little bit and turn it this way. Alright, this is where, again, I want to look through my light, get it over, get it set up the way that I think would look best. Okay, come back to my perspective view. Let's go to my IPR render again. There we go. So that's working pretty nice actually. I just got lucky that I happened to move in that right spot, because look, here's my key light. It's coming down. It's hitting right down here. Okay, so if I were to draw a straight line down, if I could give just a quick lecture on light, right? Some of you have not had perhaps a perspective class that talks about how light works and shadows cast. Okay, but just to quickly go over it with you, I have a key light here. This, if I draw a straight line from where that hits the ground plane, okay, and then if I draw a line going out and across, I draw a line from the center of the light source, and where that hits the top of my sphere and connects through, and it connects the ground plane, is where the shadow's created. Does that make sense? It's like drawing a triangle. I draw an imaginary dotted line from the center of this light, and I bring it down here, and where it hits the ground plane, I then draw a line across. Where the line from the light hits the object and connects will be where the shadow ends. Okay? But that's important for me to know, because I always have to think about, here's the center of my light, therefore this side of my sphere is going to be a little bit brighter. So my reflective light right back here, it's a little bright right now. What I need to do is punch up a little bit of a highlight on this. Okay? So let's see if I can do that by coming in. Let's select this light again. Let me see what happens if I... let's go back to IPR. Didn't mean to click that off. Let's see what happens if I raise the intensity of that light. Is that going to make my scene look a little bit more realistic? Okay. Click IPR here. Okay, I'm going to select this particular area right here. I get so tired of that window popping up all the time. I can come in here. Alright, that's pretty cool. Do you see what happened there? When I raised that up, what was that? Is that my computer that made that noise? Let's see here. Okay, so look at what happened now. The light's coming on. It's much brighter, hitting the sphere, and then it's coming back there. I'm getting a little bit of a coarse shadow there. Okay, and then I come in, I'm getting some nice reflective light on the side there. That's feeling much more realistic to me. Okay, all right, so let's take a look at something that's not feeling too realistic to me. This light's going to shoot all the way in my room, and nothing's bouncing back, hitting this backside right here. Okay, so if I want to go in here and I want to adjust that really quickly, what I can do is I'm going to cheat again, because I'm doing the demo. I'm going to create this area light here. I'm going to angle it down like this. Okay, this is what I like about the area light, guys. Look at the side of this table right here. I want the side of that table to pop out a little bit, right? So look, I can grab the light and I can squash it down. Oops, that's weird. It's not doing it. Let's try it again. Maybe it's not doing it because Phil is doing a no-no by deleting it. By duplicating it. So let's delete that. Let me go over here and create And let's go to area light here. Okay. Let's bring that a new one over. Go ahead and turn it in here. That's weird. It's not scaling. It's only scaling. Maybe that's something they changed. Huh. I'm going to have to look into that, because in the other version of Maya that I have, I've always been able to adjust that and scale it up and down. And I wonder if there's a setting or something that's preventing me from doing that. There might be. But for right now, let me go ahead and maybe that's something new that they changed. I'm going to go ahead and stretch this light out like so. I'm going to get it to cover this whole entire area right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off illuminates by default, because with it on right now, look at what happened. I'm going to blind out my sphere with it on. You see that? Okay. So I'm going to turn off illuminates by default. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put it on linear decay because it's light reflecting back, so there's going to be some type of deterioration in that light. And then I'm going to select the surfaces I want that light to be affecting right in here. And I'm going to tell it to make light links really quick, okay? And then I'm going to render right here and see what it looks like, okay? It's way too bright right there. So what I can do is select this light. I'm going to drop it down here, much lighter like this. Hit render. Okay, still a little too bright. I'm going to drop it down a little bit more, about here. Hit render. And there we go. Do you see what happens now? I have a little bit of bounce light hitting this right here, okay? So let me save this render. Let's take a look at what the difference is right there, right? I'm going to save that render, okay? And watch, if I turn this light off right now and go back to 0 and hit render, let's look at the difference, okay? See the difference? Here, I have no reflective light coming back, and it looks sort of funny. I just have this black surface right there. I created a new light, okay? See the difference right there? The new light reflects a little bit back and gives me a little bit of reflective light hitting against here. Okay, and that's still, even to be really touchy, that's even still really bright. So what I can do is come in here and get it really light at like a 75, turn off emit specular, like that. And that's sort of just perfect for me. I hope that shows up there. Yeah, on the monitors it's not too dark compared to my screen. See how I have just that little bit of reflective light hitting there? That feels more realistic for me. Okay, all right, so let's take that angle. Let me pull back a little bit here and look as well and see how my scene's looking, because I also had that reflective, the other light coming up on the top there. Okay, so that's not too bad. I'm getting this really cool sense here. This is a little bit too bright for me for what's happening in here. Okay, but what I'm going to do right now inside my set, my location, let's introduce some walls in here. Okay, so a lot of you guys, I just did this as a rough set. Let me go ahead, let's get my wall set up here. Let's go back to, here we go, -90. Okay, walls are important. Okay, why? Because light reflects inside rooms and locations, and so if I want to have something that feels really realistic, okay, I want to have some type of light reflection happening on my walls. Okay, so, and I'll show you a couple ways that we can do some real base light reflections. Okay, let me get this wall over here. There we go. Got that centered up about right there. Okay, and let's get one here. All right, and then you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make, this is just something that I always used to do when I would light scenes and locations. I'm going to put some rafters up. I'm going to create a ceiling, and I'm going to have rafters up on it. And the reason why I put some type of beams or rafters is it gives me some form of dimensionality of what's happening up on the ceiling. Okay, let's create one there. I'm going to create one, put it over here on this side really quick. Okay, let me save my scene super fast so we don't lose anything. Save scene as. Let's make the, goes back to the, it's going to a totally different location, so let me place it in the proper location here, 106, LightingBasics, yes, replace. Okay, there we go. Now, so look at what happens now when I come in here and I render my whole scene right in here. Okay, let's render that. Okay, oh, here we go. All right, so I have a little bit of light bouncing off, but also look at what happened. I now have the light hitting the edges, which looks a little funny. Okay, so if my room was a little bit wider, I could adjust that. So to quickly fix that, what I'm going to do is select this key light here, go Control A to get the attributes. I'm going to adjust the cone angle in, so it's not quite hitting the wall there. Okay, The other thing I'm going to have to do here is I have the light that's right here. I need to make sure that's not putting other, that light was meant to be affecting the sphere only. So I'm going to select that light and come down here and say objects illuminated by light and make sure exactly it's only the sphere. Okay. But if I select this light right here, this is part of my reflective light for my table right here. So if I select that light and say select objects illuminated by light, good, it's only affecting the table. Let's check this one here. Okay, objects illuminated by light. Aha, that's affecting everything right now. I wanted this light right here to be bouncing up and sort of hitting just the light right there. So what happens when I render that, imagine, see where that line's going straight across here? It's now hitting these walls, and that's what's creating that little light halo right there. Do you see that? And so if I was being really picky and be like, well, you know what, I want that light to be special just for the lamp that's illuminating the light, I can adjust that. How do I adjust that? I touch the light, I touch all three of the walls here. Okay, I can look at them in see-through view to make sure that they've all been selected correctly. I'm going to go down under lighting and shadows, lighting and shading, excuse me, and say break light links. Now when I hit render, look at what happens. I've lost that effect of the light hitting those back walls. Okay? All right. What I do want to have is some indication of reflective light coming up and above. And something that I used to do, I learned this actually from a couple lighters that I used to work with, is they used to create a base light and throw it on the ground here like a cone light. And they would spread out the cone angle of it to like 180 degrees. And they would turn it on really lightly so you had some light that would be bouncing up inside the location. Because right now I really don't have that. I have a light hitting the base, lighting up a light bulb in here, and that's it. I have no other lights that's affecting any area of my room. So I'm going to come back under Create. Let's go to Lights here. I'm going to create, and you can do this also with an area light, but for right now I'm going to do it with a spotlight really quick. Okay, I'm going to take my spotlight, I'm going to rotate it up to 90 degrees. Let me just double check that I have it set exactly at 90, almost, but I accidentally swayed it into another direction. There we go. Okay, and now with that light set, look at what happens here. I'm going to come back to the attribute settings. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to put this on linear, and I'm going to go grab the cone angle, and look at what I'm going to do. I'm going to widen out that cone angle to where it's basically 180 degrees right there. You see that? It's completely widened out. I'm going to grab that light now, and I'm going to move it up just a teeny bit where it hits just above my ground plane right there. Do you see that? Okay. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to turn it on and see what happens. I'm going to raise it up a little bit like this. Let's do an IPR of it right now. Look at what it did in my room. It now lit up the walls of my room. Okay, it's going to act as my reflective light. That's really bright though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select an area to fine tune right here. And I'm going to drop down the intensity of the light. Okay, that's pretty cool like that. So look at what, now I'm going to go ahead and do a render off of that and see what it looks like for the whole scene. Okay, see how that looks realistic now? I have light coming down here hitting this particular area. Now I'm going to have light bounce back up and hit part of my walls. I am getting a bright highlight in there though that I'm not liking. It's really bright. So let me just double check what happens if let me make sure it's from that light, and some of it might be because I have the emit specular turned on. So I'm going to turn off my emit specular. Okay, I'm going to come back again and hit render. There we go. I dulled it down a little bit, but I still had a little bit of a highlight there. Okay, so what I might do is maybe I already had this light reflecting some light back there. I can break some of the light links if I want, and I could touch that light and tell it not to affect the ceiling and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to touch that ceiling. I'm going to touch the light right here. I'm going to go in here and tell it to break light links. Okay, and I'm going to hit render. Okay, all right. You know what? That light is not from there. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that. I'm going to make that light link back. That's from my base light there. Okay. So let me adjust that really quick. Take that light. Let's make sure I have this selected. Oops. There we go. Now I have it selected. I'm going to go to light linking here and say make light links there. I'm going to touch this light right here. I believe that's the one doing it. Say objects illuminated by light. Yes, it is. Okay, so this light is coming up and hitting that ceiling. I don't want it to. I'm going to come on here and I'm going to take off illuminates by default. And now if I say show objects illuminated by light. It's not. So then I can select the objects I want it to be affecting, okay, which will be this right here and this bulb in here, okay. And then I can select the light. I'm going to tell it to make light links, okay. All right. I'm going to come back in here now and let's do another render on this and see how we're looking. There we go. Okay. So I don't have as much as that light hitting there. Now you'll notice I don't have any reflective light hitting the ground. Okay. So this would be an opportunity for me to create a special light that might bounce light back down towards the ground. Right now, if I look at this, all I have is this key light right here. Okay. And if I go in there and say objects illuminated by light, okay, it is hitting the ground, but it's not. There's not much happening. And let's take a look at. Let's go look through that light. Okay, look through light selected. There, it's just hitting a little portion of the ground. Let's go back here. Perspective view. Let's render again. Okay, I still don't have much bounce light happening inside there. So what I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to create another light. Okay, create light. This time I'm going to go in with like an area light. Let's see what happens if I do that. I'm going to grab my area light right in here. Okay, I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. Okay, let me double check that rotation there. -90. Okay, get it in position. I'm going to go ahead and scale this guy up. Okay. I'm going to bring this guy up to the top, let's say right here. Now I don't want it to affect, it's going to hit the wall right now and light up the wall. I don't want it to affect that wall at all. So what I can do is I'm going to come back in, I'm going to break the light links, Control A for attributes, turn off illuminates by default, put it on to linear lighting, and I'm going to tell that light to affect maybe these planes right here. Let's make sure I have them all, there we go. And select the light, of course, which I just, there we go, and tell it make light links. Okay? Alright, so now when I render, see what happens. Look at what happens. It's way too bright. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the size of that and bring down the brightness. Okay? I might even just need to tell the light to affect only the ground plane. Okay? Let's take a look at now. Alright? A little bit brighter here. What it's going to do is it's going to hit these edges here and it's going to light that up. And so what I'm probably going to do is break the light links in here. That's not too bad like that. Let's get a better render of that and zoom into that. Oops, get a little bit closer in here. So. You see what it's doing now? Now I have light hitting a little bit. See the reflective light that's hitting the ground here? There's a little bit of reflective light. I'm in a tight box. So this is actually sort of working because I'm going to have light that's going to hit here. It's going to bounce back and hit some of this wall. Some of that's going to come back and hit here. It's going to. This panel should be a little bit darker up in there. I'm still getting that definitive light hitting there, so I think I'm going to adjust that really quick and try to take it off. And I do believe that is coming from here. If I were to say, actually what I can do, this is a great example of where I'm going to touch the ceiling and come down and I'm going to say select the lights illuminating the object and it instantly lights it up. Okay. Actually it's from this light right here. So that light, see what it's doing? It's coming up at an angle and that's what's putting that light on the ceiling right there. So I'm going to touch the ceiling with that light and I'm going to tell it to break the light links. Okay. I'm going to come back in here now and watch when I render I won't have that little fuzzy spot on the ceiling. See, it's gone. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. That's feeling somewhat realistic to me for sort of my first pass, okay, at this. This is a box set, so some of my light that's bouncing up here might be somewhat similar. I could still make some really fine-tuned adjustments in here, okay. Let's say that I want the walls to dull down a little bit. I might come in here. I can take this light and I could adjust part of the, let's say, if I bring it down a little bit less here, let me adjust this guy here and make this guy a little bit lighter. So it's really hard to jump. There you go. I got 0.75. That's what I was sort of aiming for. Sometimes you have to enter it manually. That's not too bad. I want the ground plane to be a little bit brighter though, so I'm going to bump that up a little bit more here. And if it starts affecting too much of the walls, what I can do is tell it not to affect the walls anymore. Okay, let's see what happens when I do that. There we go. That's pretty cool. And I need to adjust the reflective light here a little bit more. Bump that up a teeny bit more. There we go. It's a little dark. I want to be able to see the beams that I put up there a little bit more, so I'm going to adjust that a teeny bit. Okay, like that. That's not too bad. Okay. Now, here's another question that I actually got in this debate once with a student, and it's actually a really good point. When the light's illuminating from this lamp right here, okay, it's coming out in an angle like this. Do you see this? If I were to pull this back in here a little bit, it's coming out in an angle from there. So there's a certain point where if you were to draw a line from straight across the room, see how that light intercepts that room? Where the walls are going to be a little bit brighter here because they're being exposed to more light, versus up above here, there's no light really penetrating because that's all reflective light that's being cast. So I brought that light down a little bit. I'm going to hit render. And you see how that gives me the effect that the light's on and there's light possibly hitting part of that area. It's still a little bit bright. I'm going to see if I can't scale this in a little bit to loose. There you go. By scaling that light in, I didn't have the edges quite touching the wall. So now it's sort of creating that effect that I want, where I have a dedicated light coming down here from this lamp, and then I have just a light indication that there's light bouncing around hitting the walls. It fades up. I get a little bit of reflective light on the ceiling here, and it makes it feel much more realistic. Okay? All right. So a good idea that you can do sometimes, this is me being very specific with lights in my set. Right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lights about. Okay? Sometimes I can pull this off in a set without having to use all these different lights. So let's do this as an example right now. I'm going to go ahead and delete some of these lights that are in here. Okay, I'm just going to hide them. I shouldn't say delete them. I'm going to hide them for right now. And what I'm going to do is come in here, and sometimes when you're working on a set or location, you don't have a ton of time to come in and modify all these lights. But what you can do is just create a really base light here, an ambient light. So let me try that really quick. Let's go into create here, lights, and let's create an ambient light here. Okay. And if I bring my ambient light up, remember that ambient light affects the whole room. So if I just put it really low like this, that might just give me enough light to sort of affect part of the room and not wash everything out. That's actually washing quite a bit of the location out. So sometimes what I do is, depending on the situation and the lighting that's taking place, is I come in here and I throw an ambient light in there first to see how it's getting the scene to work, and then I sort of modify it from there. Okay, let's see what happens here. Let me make sure I have no shadows on. I don't. There we go. Okay. Now I've lost my light though. I don't have that light that's shining back up there. So let's say display, show all. Let's bring in the other lights that I had. Okay, I want that light hitting up underneath. But now I might not need, let's say if I don't need that light there, I might not need part of my reflective light. You know what, let's leave that one in. Here's my main light. I'm going to go ahead and hide that guy there. I need that to illuminate underneath there. And let me hide this light here. Let's see. Now I have fewer lights in my scene. Let's see what it looks like. Okay. It's not bad. I'm losing some of that gradient effect that I had on the wall by introducing the ambient light. It's washing it off. So in this particular location, I probably would not use the ambient light because I have one light that's on inside my scene. So if I say display, show all, okay. But if I had the interior of a hallway and it's daylight out, that might be a good opportunity for me to use an ambient light where it sort of lights up the whole entire hallway, and I'm not having to weigh down my set with tons of different lights. Okay, that's feeling somewhat realistic and working for me right now. Oh, which I forgot I had hidden the cube here next to the sphere earlier. So if I render that, that's what I was working with right there. But look at what, now here's the reason why we work from one particular angle, is that look at what happens if I do this. If I come in here right now and turn to this side and look this way, let's hide this back wall. Totally different. Okay, everything changes from the way I'm lit there. Okay, that is way too bright of a reflective light there. We need to modify that. So that's why it's a really great idea. Okay, show all. Sometimes it really works, you know. You can have a particular set that you had to do lighting in, and it can work for you. But for right now, let's render this again. I like that effect that's happening right there. Okay, so let me save this real quick. Okay, file, save scene as. And I have an old set here that has lights in it, and I'll bring it up and I'll render it for you. Okay. Fortunately, I don't have some of the textures that were assigned to it. Those got lost in the transition. But I have a file here called Old Sets, Maya Sets, and I have this, I think it's the lamp room here. Let's see if this is it right here. Okay. There it is. Okay. Look at all those lights in there. There's quite a few lights in there casting everywhere. And I have my camera set up as main 3. Okay, if I come into my perspective view and look, quite a few lights. See that? There's a lot of mood set in this piece. So I had lots of reflective lights around the back here. Quite a few there. Let's look at my outliner, how many lights I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. There's probably about 25 lights in there. Okay. Let's go back to my main view. Okay, but look at the effect though when I render this out. I had some base bump map textures on there that gave it like a sandy, gritty effect and feel. But let's see what the render looks like here. Looks not good. It hasn't started showing yet. Maybe it's too much. Or I crashed Maya just now. Let's figure this out. 1 second. Alright, I'm going to escape the render, because I've been recording for almost an hour here and I'm worried that maybe I have too much computer memory being used. So let me pause this recording and save it. Okay. Alright, let's render this out here. I adjusted the setting. It should render much quicker now. I put it at HD 720. Let's see what happens. So I have quite a few lights in here for the mood because it's very low lit, but this gives you guys an idea when you make a movie or a game how many computers are involved, because if this is just one frame. So imagine what happens when we have a character running in and animating, fully textured. Maybe there's lights flickering on the wall and special effects happening inside the room in all the locations, right? And then you have the set, and you have 1 second. And 1 second of animation has how many frames?
24 frames.
Yeah, in a minute. And sometimes things can even be over-rendered and buffered with even more. But imagine, so here's my light. So I had the key light coming from here, which actually had a fog setting on it, so it was really hazy. And then all this I had to go in and light, and get it to match up where it looked like light was bouncing off in the room, and it gets darker as it comes up here. And that's why there were so many lights in this particular set. It was hard to get this to feel, they wanted it to feel like the Indiana Jones Temple of Doom. The character walks in and goes, there are the key lights coming down, and that's where the treasure is. And so I had to light this whole set accordingly to that. So, but imagine, you do the math. That's why they have these giant towers in these big air-conditioned rooms. Okay, each tower has one of these machines that's this thick. It's called a render farm. And so each tower has like 30 or 40 render farms on it, and then there's like 20 stacks in one room, and there's 10 of these rooms, because it just took this exactly 59 seconds to render at 720 DPI. So imagine if this was at full widescreen 300 DPI, it would take maybe 3-4 minutes per render, and that's one frame. So imagine 24 frames with all the other items in there. It adds up quickly. Okay, so that was the scene I did. That was my sample of a set with rough lighting in it. Sorry I don't have any of the base textures on it, but you can see how detailed you can take something. okay, and how expansive. Okay, all right, so that concludes our basic lighting, or lecture on lighting.